Welcome back, everybody. If you watched my first video of my first impressions on the 2023 KTM 250XC, I promised you then that I would provide some follow-up once I'd had a chance to get a little bit more seat time on the bike. And my first ride on the bike was a week ago, just at a little turn track out in the desert for a couple of hours, and I had an opportunity to race the bike this past weekend, and was able to race it for about 3 hours and roughly 60 to 70 miles, and had a wonderful, awesome time. But wanted to give you my observations again after having a little bit more time on the bike. The course was very similar actually to what I was riding last weekend as far as terrain. It was pretty sandy terrain for the most part, nothing too rocky or crazy in that way. So again, I recognize that there's still an opportunity here to get the bike in some different terrain and riding situations, but I did have a chance to really get on it a lot and just experience all that it has to offer. So my immediate first impressions again after getting on the bike, I didn't have a chance to really ride it around other than just warm it up and get it to the start line. And out here in the West at this type of event, it was a dead engine start. I did not have a very good line picked out. I was racing on the A or expert line. So here in Utah, pros go first, experts go second, and then the B and C classes after that. So literally like last minute as I'm sitting on the line, I moved my bike all the way over to the left. I had a decent line to the banners, but there was a bunch of bushes in my way, but I didn't really have any riders around me. Banner dropped and bike lit right up. Got a good start, a reasonably decent start, clicked third. I started in second gear, clicked third, and the bike just flat out ripped. And I instantly knew that I was going to be the first guy to the banners. As soon as I got through the banners, another guy on ironically a 23 YZ250, I'm not sure if it was an X or not, goes blowing by me around the corner, hang a hard left after the banners. We kind of bump bars, converge a little bit, and unfortunately he took a pretty big tumble over the bars after he hit a sagebrush and went down. And my great start was all for naught at that point, as I was kind of back behind a dozen or so guys. But as far as the bike and the motor, it was just awesome. And then I had that same experience kind of play out over and over again throughout the rest of the race, as far as the motor and the power that it provided. I'll try to find a few clips and share it with you, but just like I could literally just come into anywhere where there was any glimpse of an opening to make a pass, and the bike would just, I mean, I was the limitation and not the bike. And the reality is that's the way it is in most cases, whether I was riding a 250F, whether I was riding a 450, whatever. I mean, it's usually more the rider than the bike. But just knowing that you could just whack that throttle and the bike would just pull anything was super awesome. I absolutely loved that. If anything, I feel like the motor impressed me even more after this last weekend than the first time that I rode it the weekend before. Didn't notice any lack of any type of bottom end. Again, we never got into anything super slow or technical. We did have some tight twisties in kind of down in the Tamaris, along some river bottoms and those kinds of things, but not that kind of super gnarly clutch slipping, technical terrain. But anywhere else, coming hard out of the corners in the sand, the bike was just straight up amazing. Let's talk about suspension then really quick. If you recall my impressions from riding it the first time, I really didn't have anything bad to say about the suspension. I felt like it worked. I didn't feel like it was doing anything weird. I have to own a mistake that I had made though. I literally had done nothing. I didn't even check the air pressure, the sag, anything. I just jumped on the bike and rode it. I'm not advocating that that's a great way to do any type of testing. I'm simply acknowledging that that was my baseline. I just got on the bike and rode it. So in preparation for the race this weekend, I was like, okay, I gotta really see where this thing's at. I checked the air pressure and it was at 115. So I put the air pressure on the fork to 140. I adjusted all of the clickers, compression, rebound, high speed, low speed on the shock and rebound, to the sport setting, which, if you know the KTMs, you kind of have three settings, sport being the most aggressive. So I set them all at the most aggressive setting, knowing that this race would be a little bit more, faster and bigger hits and that type of thing. And also because I've not swapped out any springs, and I'm definitely on the upper end of the stock spring rate. The other thing that I did, which I wanted to for this race, but I didn't want to do it because I didn't want it to disguise anything weird that this suspension might be doing or not be doing, but I did install my GPR V5 stabilizer. But I bought the GPR Pro Kit, which has a different top triple clamp and a rubber damper mounted bar clamp. And the reason I did that was twofold. One was I really wanted to retain the stock bar height on this bike rather than putting an under the bar stabilizer on it and having it raise the bars too much. In speaking with GPR, they told me, if I recall, this is the closest thing that you can get to stock in the Pro Kit, and it raised it like 201 thousandths of an inch, so it's very minuscule. And I sat on the bike and I literally couldn't tell any different. And so I did put that on, and I had the stabilizer set at a very low setting, like between 1 and 2. Normally on my other bike I would run it at like 3 to 4 in a race like this. This was my experience with the suspension after making those changes. I went out, and there are some sections on this course, I've raced here before, where you are crossing perpendicular to all of these different like water ruts and G-outs. There's a particular like little valley or section, and every time we race it, it's just, you're just slam, and you're hitting these G-outs. And the first couple of loops or laps around, it's about a 22-mile lap, I was hitting stuff pretty aggressively, but what I was discovering was it totally took it. And it just started to inspire a little bit more confidence in me to hit stuff a little bit faster and a little bit more aggressive. So by the time I went around on the third loop, I actually had clear air, and I wasn't able, my GoPro battery had died at that point, otherwise I think it'd be a good example to show you. But I was hitting it as fast as I've ever hit any of those types of things, and in particular at this course. And so really what I'm saying is it worked for me really well. In fact, better than I thought, because my impression from last week was that it worked, it was good, it was decent enough, but that if anything, for that type of aggressive racing, it might have been a smidgen on the soft side. And my oldest son had taken the bike earlier in the week for a different purpose and had ridden it just a little bit, and kind of came back and said the same thing. Well, now that I've ridden it, in that type of setting, I was super impressed, actually. I was surprised, and it worked really well for me. So much so that at the end of the event, I was chatting with my buddy Kevin at Moto Experts, because he and I have been in conversation about getting this bike revalved, and I'm actually going to leave it for a little bit. I'm going to ride it in a couple of weeks at the Tecate Enduro in Mexico, because that will be on the complete other end of the spectrum as far as racing is concerned. Slow, technical, rocky, gnarly, versus the high speed hits and whoops and G-outs and that type of thing. And I want to do that intentionally because I want to have a little bit more baseline, and I want to have a little bit more experience of what the bike will do or perform like in that type of situation. So for now, I'm actually leaving it, but for that Tecate race, I'll probably soften it up a little bit just on the clickers and whatnot, but otherwise I'm going to leave it stock before I do any type of revalving, so that when I do a revalve, I can know and have a little bit more feedback as to what I want. A couple of other thoughts. Just the ergonomics again. I mentioned that I had bought that GPR Pro kit intentionally to not adjust or change the bar height or anything of that nature, and it was one of those where I didn't notice it, and I was very comfortable the entire time. And so for me, that means that it was working the way it should, meaning that I wasn't riding and thinking, oh, I'm too far back, I'm too far forward, the rider triangle's too small, or anything like that. I was just very, very comfortable the entire time. I felt like I could get my balance point to get in the attack mode up and over the bike, and that I could get up and over the seat and get really aggressive in cornering when I needed to, and back when I needed to as well, to keep the front end light. Gas mileage. It was a 22-mile loop done 3 times. I gassed after each loop, and this wasn't super scientific. I had my quick fill filled to about 4 gallons. At the end of the race, I filled my bike back up, and I had roughly about a half gallon. So I used about 3.5 gallons of gas in a race that was, let's say, roughly 66 miles of pretty fast, sandy terrain. So about the highest consumption of gas that you would expect. So not great, I'll be honest. Very unscientific estimate of roughly about 18 to 19 miles per gallon at a race pace in sand. So you should be able to get about a 40-mile race loop done on the stock tank. But I fully expect, and I'm certainly hopeful, that when I'm riding it, trail riding or in slower terrain, that I should get a little bit better, because I've also seen and heard reports of guys eking out 70 plus, but from watching those videos, they're just kind of putting around in the desert, and that's great because I do a lot of that as well, but that's not what I had this last weekend. And last thought, just a couple of other really quick things. Just wanted to acknowledge some other minor modifications that I've made to the bike. Motor still 100% stock. I've already spoken about the suspension. Everything else was pretty much bolt-on stuff, just for protective off-road stuff, the usuals. But wanted to let you know what's out there for these bikes, at least at this point, for me, that worked. I bought the Tusk radiator guards, and those bolt right up, the same ones that they've had for the last couple of years. I bought a Tusk rear rotor guard. The tab on the swing arm on the inside does fit, but the only thing is, if you buy just the rotor guard from Rocky Mountain, it will not fit because of the different sized axle this year. So you have to buy the reduced sleeve or reducer from, the only one that I'm aware of that's available out there right now is from Bulletproof Designs. And if you buy their rear rotor guards, of course, it will come with it. I just bought the little sleeve from them for like $8 or something, and it works perfectly with the axle size and fits right into the Tusk rotor guard. I also installed, or actually took off my old bike, the Midwest Mountain Engineering clutch lever. It's kind of a little shorty lever that reduces the clutch pull on those Brembos by a claimed like 40-50% or something. For me, it actually makes a really big difference. I have kind of some issues with the fingers on my left hand, and it just makes it easier for clutch actuation, and reduces arm pump for me. And the other little side benefit that I like about it is because it's shorter, and I like to run just the flag guards, not the full wraparounds. I found that even though it's not a breakaway, because it's shorter, it's less susceptible to damage. And then I also installed a Tusk breakaway front brake lever. This was new. I saw this on Rocky Mountain's website. I bought it. It fit okay, but it just was a smidgen tight in the perch, and the spring's a little bit smaller than the stock spring, which I think is intentional, but I think I just had it I had it adjusted too far out, and it just didn't have kind of the same feel. So I need to tweak with that. I may take it off and put the stock one back on. It does fit. I do like that it's breakaway, but there was just something a little smidgen off for me, and I need to look at that a little closer. And then I also put mooses front and rear, because that's what I like to do, and I recognize for some guys that affects how you how it feels maybe for you, but for me it's what I use and what I like. So in summary, I am actually not only happy with this bike, I'm actually happier than I was even a week ago. I was so excited to go race it this past weekend, had a great race, a super fun time, and it just makes me want to get out and go riding again. And like I mentioned last time, that's why I ride dirt bikes, because I have a ton of fun riding with my friends and family. And so if this bike inspires that in me and for anybody else, then go for it. And that does not mean you need a brand new bike to enjoy that. Get out, ride whatever you've got, have fun on it. But for me, this bike's been a super fun upgrade. So thanks everybody for some of your time. If you are interested in more dirt bike content, everything from riding tips, trail riding, racing videos, and more, feel free to also check out Ride with the Knight's YouTube channel. There's some other footage from my son of the same race if you want to see how the fast guys actually ride, as well as a ton of other really great content out there that you might find enjoyable. Once again, thank you everybody for your time, and once I get a little bit more seat time on the bike and some other situations, I'll follow up with everybody and let you know my experience and observations from that. Thanks again. Take care. Happy riding.
Appreciate it. JT's right behind me.